Hi everyone, this is a short presentation on sentence structure for the Academic English 20 program. Now, many of you will have gotten some feedback on sentence structure, and I'd like to go over the basics here today. So, the number one most important rule for any sentence is that every sentence needs a verb. Okay, it's not a sentence if it doesn't have a verb. My metaphor for this is the verb is like the sun at the center of the solar system. Everything else revolves around that verb. And without the sun, without the verb, the whole system collapses. Verbs themselves need subjects. Okay, now this might take many forms. It might be a noun, it might be a pronoun, like he or she. It might be a noun clause or a string of words that make a noun, or it might be a gerund or infinitive, like an ing verb, okay, like singing or writing. So these two things are essential to any sentence. Okay, we need a verb, and the verbs need subjects. Prepositional phrases, for example, in the house, cannot be subjects. Okay, so if you see something that's in a prepositional phrase, that cannot act as the subject of a sentence. Verbs also, they need subjects, but they also need what's known as an object or a complement. This is sometimes referred to as a predicate, the verb and the object together. But you'll see that this often happens, but not always. For example, cats meow is okay. Meow is the verb, cat's the subject. We don't actually need an object or a complement on top of that. This is called an intransitive verb. But most verbs are actually, they need objects. For example, you can't just say John gave. You need an object after the verb. So John gave a speech. That's fine. Okay, gave or give needs that object. Meow doesn't. A complement is like, the wall is red. Okay, it doesn't. It's not an object in itself, but it complements the verb to be here. Okay, so the most basic rules you can get: subject, verb, object. We know that English is a SVO language. Okay, so keep that in your mind. Now, let's start with really simple sentences. I wrote a paper. Okay, subject, verb, object. Really simple there. This is what's called a simple sentence. Okay, there's not much added to it. It's just an independent clause, stands on its own, and nothing else is. It's not adorned in any way. You can have a compound sentence, which is basically two simple independent clauses. I wrote a paper. I played soccer. Now, we can't just write a sentence like this. This would be a run-on sentence. We need something in the middle. We need something bridging those two independent clauses to make them a compound sentence. Some people think they can put a comma between these two independent clauses. You actually can't. This is called a comma splice. If you do this, this is incorrect. What we can do is we can use something along the lines of a conjunction. Okay, conjunctions bridge clauses together. So I wrote a paper and I played soccer. If you wanted to make it a little bit more complicated, you could add the prepositional phrase after class in there as well. Okay, so we're getting more complicated as we go. Let's look at a complex sentence. I wrote a paper. I played soccer. We have and, we have the prepositional phrase afterwards, after class. To make it more complex, we can add a dependent clause like although I was really busy. We'll look at these in at another week, but generally if it starts with an adverbial, the clause starts with something like although or if or unless or even though. These give rise to dependent clauses. We can't just have although I was really busy on its own, but it works if we have an independent clause to go with it, like I wrote a paper. If you want to make these a little bit more complicated, you could add in an adjective clause as well, which was due that night. So although I was really busy, I wrote a paper and I played soccer with a group of friends after class. So gradually we're building up more complex sentences, adding in relative clauses, adding in adverbial clauses, adding in prepositional phrases. And this is how we build sentence structure. Okay, so that's a simple, a compound, and a complex sentence. Now, when you get feedback, you'll very often see this. SS, sentence structure. You have a problem with your sentence structure. So this can be there can be many different causes of this. For example, if you look at the first one, there are many majors to choose from on this campus. The problem here is there's no verb. So we need to add in a verb. Okay, remember, sentences just collapse if there's no verb. There's nothing for the words to revolve around. There are many majors to choose from on this campus is a fine sentence. Okay, but we need that verb. Don't forget the be verb or any verb in the sentence, because everything collapses. When realized his son was skipping class, Mr. Simon was angry. In this case, we do need realize is the verb, and we need the subject. Okay, when he realized his son was skipping class, Mr. Simon was angry. That's okay. Remember, every sentence needs a verb, but the verbs themselves need subjects. For the next one, they do not want their children to grow up father and mother's love. Here, the last part of this sentence is actually intended to be a prepositional phrase. So without is fine. But if you don't have that preposition, it does not open up the prepositional phrase and the sentence makes no sense. Okay. Moving on. This one is problematic because the verb here is explains, but what's the subject? You probably think it's the article, but it can't be the article because it's a prepositional phrase. So if we take out in, which makes the prepositional phrase, and we just use the article, it's a fine sentence. The article, speaking up for introverts, explains problems with mandatory participation. That's fine. And the last one, my friend has good study habits. She gets up early every day to do extra work. This sounds okay, but as we looked at earlier, these two independent clauses cannot be separated by a comma. Okay, they can be separated by a semicolon. That would be okay, that would be fine. But you can't just separate them with a comma. That's called a comma splice. So these are some common issues with sentence structure, and I strongly encourage you to get some more practice with them, because they're quite sophisticated, a little bit complicated, and I wish you the best of luck dealing with your sentence structure issues.